So this past weekend, I got to see, for the very first time, a movie that has eluded me. I've been wanting to see it. I was going to see it in theaters and I missed it when it had a limited run in the United States. Shin Godzilla, aka Godzilla Resurgence. I got to finally see this film. I have not seen it. And now I finally got to see it. So I'm going to give you my quick thoughts. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I've covered Godzilla films here on World of Geekdom before. In fact, I even covered them on my main channel, Geekdom 101. But with the news dropping that they're going to be releasing Shin Ultraman, which I think is already out in Japan, and then next year Shin Kamen Rider, Hideaki Anno has been busy. Now, for those who don't know, Hideaki Anno is one of Japan's most respected filmmakers, and if he wasn't respected, Toho would not let him do this with Godzilla and Ultraman, two of their biggest, most iconic properties ever. You have to understand, and most of you probably already know this, but Ultraman and Godzilla are literally two of the biggest, hugest franchises to ever come out of Japan. You could even argue that Godzilla's number one. You could even make that argument, and I wouldn't be against it because of how inspiring it is, how long it's been around. It's legendary. And Ultraman is right up there. So this dude Hideaki Anno, who wrote and directed Shin Godzilla, he was also famous for creating Evangelion, which is one of the most twisted anime ever. So I'm going into this film being someone who has seen the majority of the Godzilla franchise films. I've seen the Legendary Pictures versions, which are definitely probably the best American-made Godzilla. Obviously, you can only compare it to the 98 Godzilla, but still, I'm going into this looking at something new, but also something familiar, and that's definitely what we see here. This movie, it runs about 2 hours. You could have shaved some time off of it, to be honest with you, because there are some things that kind of drag on, but this film definitely is a hybrid of the old original Godzilla, the black and white one, and kind of modern filmmaking. To be honest with you, it is, it really legitimately is another soft reboot for Godzilla. And we've seen that before. We've seen Godzilla get rebooted a bunch of times. But this one really felt a lot like the original, like an up-to-date version of the original. But Hideaki Anno did enough things to give it, a change. There's a lot of symbolism in this film. There's a lot of symbolism because the film does put a lot of focus on the human characters and sort of their internal political struggles, but it also makes you think and it makes you wonder, what if this actually happened? What if one day, because we as humanity have been abusing this planet, that the planet kind of fights back by unleashing a monster like this? Even though it's not really the Earth's fault, it's kind of our fault, it is something to think about. But what I found really interesting about this film is sort of how Godzilla evolves. In most Godzilla films, he's a giant lizard who just attacks Tokyo, and then, of course, later on he becomes a defender of the Earth. He becomes a good guy, so to speak. But in this film, Godzilla is a little bit different in the sense of, as the film progresses, Godzilla transforms and evolves literally. This Godzilla, unlike previous ones, can mutate. And oftentimes what he can do is he mutates every time that he's sort of I don't want to say damaged, but as the film goes on, he changes. And as a result of that, it becomes increasingly difficult to beat him because of the fact that, he is changing. And, there's tons of destruction in the film. There's tons of, people getting murked by Godzilla. But there's also a lot of really interesting ways they try to beat him. Godzilla's mouth blast in this film looks amazing. And I gotta say that about the production. Hideaki Anno, let's talk about that for a minute. The movie is great because he does a phenomenal job of combining suits with practical effects with CGI. And a lot of the shots in this film, one thing he's really good at is having these huge, wide shots of Tokyo. There's some really high up camera angles, which obviously is done with miniatures and sometimes with actual footage, where you see a big shot of Tokyo, and then you'll see a shot of Godzilla there destroying something. It gives the movie a huge scope. And as I'm watching it, I was thinking, man, I regret not seeing this in theaters, because a movie like this, in fact, all kaiju films, I think should be seen in theaters because they're big, big monsters. You can watch them at home, but it's not the same as like being in the theater with the 16 speakers and like the biggest possible screen, so it really makes Godzilla seem giant. And Hideaki Anno did a great job of making the monster look threatening, large, and dangerous. And so they tried different things to kill Godzilla. I'm not going to spoil what they do, but the ending of this film has a really creepy ending. Like, the ending is straight up creepy because as Godzilla's mutating, like they kind of discuss it, and you don't really think about it too much. But then when you see at the end kind of what might happen next, it does have somewhat of a cliffhanger. Now, from what I understand, Shin Ultraman and Shin Kamen Rider both are going to take place in the same universe, so we may see some crossover stuff. They could be setting up a cinematic universe like what they've been doing with Legendary Pictures films. And I don't know if they're going to eventually do Shin King Kong, or I don't know what they're going to do with that. We can't predict that. It hasn't been announced yet, but it's going to be interesting because the way this film ended, it literally leaves it open for more. It really does. But I really like the effects. The one thing I will say, though, is that Godzilla's first form in the film, I didn't like the way it looked. Like, I mean, the design is nice, but it really looked like a bad rubber suit monster. I'm just being honest with you. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, that's not really a good shot. Maybe if they did it, maybe if I saw it on the big screen, it'd be different. But seeing it, well, the way I saw it on a regular screen, not a theatrical screen, it just didn't look that good. Now, when he finally becomes the Godzilla that we all know and love, the traditional, like, on his hind legs Godzilla, I think that it looks great. It's familiar, but it's also new territory. And I really like what they did there. The human characters, to me, they weren't that interesting. Like, some of them were kind of okay. There's a male and a female lead, but well, she's not really that much of a lead, but she's in the film. But they really weren't that interesting, and a lot of times I was kind of really excited for the way that for the monster, the destruction. That's really why people love these films, because Godzilla's an absolute freak, destroying things, and and you always wonder, what are they going to do to this guy? So in this film, they have a new way of trying to beat him, and it's interesting because they try other things that they've done in other films, and it doesn't work. At least not to kill him. And I will say, though, I do like the final, like, maybe 15 minutes because, dude, they hit this dude with everything, man. All hell broke loose, and it was really, really cool. Also, Godzilla has kind of new powers in this film. I don't want to spoil it, but he does do different things in this movie than he did in the past. And I know that Dragon Ball Superhero kind of borrowed some ideas from this. I'm not going to go into that here on this video, but overall, like, I did enjoy watching it, and I'm actually intrigued because it's something. Hideaki Anno did something new with Godzilla. He took Godzilla in a different direction. I'm just wondering where it's going to go from here, because it could go in a lot of different directions. I mean, I know that the Shin Godzilla sequel was canceled or at least postponed, but if Shin Ultraman takes place in the same universe, then they have to mention Godzilla, right? Are they going to eventually do Ultraman versus Godzilla? Is that the long-term plan? Is that what Toho wants? That's going to be interesting. So I did like it. Check it out if you don't, if you can. It's been distributed and I think subbed. I don't know if there's a dub. I only saw the sub version from Crunchyroll, aka Funimation. So they're the ones that kind of localized it here. But I did watch it, and those are my thoughts. And I look forward to seeing Shin Ultraman. The trailer looks great. I might actually like Shin Ultraman more than I like Shin Godzilla. Anyways, I will close out the video. It was a good movie. It was a fun movie. Not my favorite Godzilla film by any means. Not my favorite, but they definitely tried some new things that I found very interesting. With that being said, thanks for watching. Have a great day and take care.